My name is Matthew Black. I am the Cavaliers Audio Caption Manager. To give you a brief overview of what we're using, it starts with the Avantis at the center of the whole thing. The carts that we're currently using with the Cavaliers, we're using the MC30. It's the triple wide mixer cart with our Avantis mixer. It's got 64 channels of input, which is perfect for us because we're using timpani, drum set, some of the auxiliary equipment that requires more microphones, and we're using a good amount of wireless as well. We use the SC30s on our center fill speakers. We love those. They provide the angle that we need for our speaker to make it up top to the box. For our line arrays, we're using the HDL6s from RCF. We're using the SC10 speaker carts, and we love those because it just ensures that the angle of the speakers are going to be correct as we need to adjust from show to show. When we look at point source speakers versus line array systems, line arrays do a better job of sending the full frequency range up to the audience or up to the press box than point source speakers do. You'll notice that we're using both point source speakers and line arrays. The point source speakers are mostly for the group that's sitting up front that we don't want to blow their faces off, or for the adjudicators. While the adjudicators are not supposed to judge what's coming through the speakers, if they are sampling the front ensemble, we do want them to get a bit of synthesizer as well so that they can hear what's going on there as they adjudicate. But we're using the line arrays to get the most transparent sound up to the press box as possible. We're running a redundant Mac Mini setup, which means that we have one Mac Mini, and if it goes down, it automatically switches to the other Mac Mini running MainStage. We're running a variety of sauce synths, Omnisphere, Contact, a bunch of different libraries that are super high quality. We're running microphones on all of the keyboards. We're running soloist microphones for our soloists. We're running a standard miking setup. We're using Audio-Technica 35s on all of our marimbas and on our vibraphones. We're running Beta 98s on our timpani, and we're running a standard E604 setup on our drum set with an SM57 on the snare drum. On the kick drum, we have an SM91 that is a contact microphone that we like a lot. It takes phantom power and it provides a nice warm low end. We're using the DK20 with the drum set, and we love that because having the drum set set up and mic'd up so that we're not having to set it up and then mic it up is a huge time saver when we're coming on and off the field, and a gear saver too as well. We have Beta 98s on all of the Hornline members. We made that decision because of their durability. You know, all the microphones that we're using, we're not using a single microphone in the entire front ensemble setup that's more than $300 that I can think of right now. The kick mic might be $350, but everything else is about $150 per mic. It's really accessible to the high schools. Looking at our system as a whole, we are really appreciative of the administration at Cavaliers and some of the sponsorship deals that we have with Pageantry Innovations, making sure that all of our gear is at top spec. Mac Minis are so cheap now. The technology has come so far. I think back to just 10 years ago when you would have to spend $3,000 to $4,000 on a laptop to make a system go. And now we're at a place where to buy a redundant Mac Mini setup, now we're in the $4,000 to $5,000 range instead of the $10,000 to $15,000 range. And so it's much more accessible. When you consider how much a hardware synthesizer like a Korg Micro or a Montage costs, those are really good equipment for some schools. If you are by yourself and you are trying to run an organization by yourself and you don't have someone on the ground level, I highly recommend the hardware sense and I highly recommend the Montages. We are actually using Montages with a redundant Mac Mini setup. We find that the Montages are more roadworthy than some of the cheaper MIDI controllers. We like to use something that we know is going to stand the wear and tear of a drum corps. One of the reasons that I like the 88 key versus the 76 or the 61, we typically use the center 61 keys to play, but I like having an extra octave or two up top so that we can trigger samples. And then you have an extra octave down low so that you can trigger patch changes. I find that triggering patch changes on actual keys instead of using the buttons is more advantageous because the buttons on the MIDI controller, if your MIDI controller happens to go down and you need to borrow from someone, if you borrow someone else's keyboard and you've got those mapped, you don't have to worry about matching the model to the model. We want an acoustic sounding ensemble, an acoustic sounding brass line. And so with that, we're only using wireless to pick up the soloist. With that, we're running 8 channels of wireless only. We are not miking the horn line as some ensembles are doing. That's a philosophical decision. We like the darker sound that it provides when you don't amplify the horn line. One of my favorite parts is in the closer, where we're doing an homage back to the Four Corners show that was so iconic, where we have 4 players that are in each of the 4 corners, and it ends last with a tuba on the front left corner playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It's a gorgeous moment. We do reinforce, without the wireless, we do reinforce with synthesizers, and that comes from really, really high quality patches. We're using contact libraries that are at the top level of string libraries, choir libraries, organs, those sorts of things that are characteristic like brass lines that fill out the sound a little bit, but we're also very careful not to step on the toes of the orchestration. We've made the decision to not put things in the show that are not characteristic. So for instance, if we had an electric guitar that came out of nowhere that there's no context for, that would be electronics that didn't necessarily fit with our symphonic sound. Those sorts of moments when we use samples and electronics, we're trying to give the audience a feeling that works perfectly, marrying to the acoustic sound and the performers that are already there, not trying to hide or accentuate something that's not actually there. There's a moment in the show where we don't play Over the Rainbow, don't play Over the Rainbow, don't play Over the Rainbow, and then finally, whenever we present that the first time, we do it with Judy Garland, so that it is that real, true, iconic feeling. As I'm making decisions as the sound designer for the Cavaliers, I'm constantly thinking orchestrationally. I'm thinking about what's going to add to this and make it feel more full and characteristic, rather than what's going to compete with or take away. One of the beautiful things is something that's called a rise and a hit, where it's much like a suspended cymbal. We listen to suspended cymbals the entire show, and it's the same exact metal sound over and over and over again. So if you can use something like a rise and a hit to color those moments, you end up with a more dynamic show in each of your transitions. One of the things that I like to do is consider an electronic palette that you can use throughout the show that's going to glue everything together. So let's say that we're doing a show about mermaids and sirens. You could have a female vocalist that sings soloistically through the entire show that would glue all that moment together. And it gives you a nice dynamic range whenever the winds need to get the horns off their faces. It gives you an opportunity to give another palette cleanser to the audience and to the adjudicators. So we're using the Pageantry Innovation Carts, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I love is at my high school where I teach, at Carmel High School, we are using the first generation of Pageantry Innovation Carts, and they are still holding strong. I think we had to change one wheel after about 8 years. And so one of the things that I love about the pageantry stuff is its durability, and knowing that whenever you buy a set of carts, it's going to not only protect your gear, but it's going to be a one-time investment for you that you can grow and grow and grow, knowing that you're protecting your gear.